what do nurse midwives do?
Yeah, so that is a question that everyone asks. A nurse midwife is basically a provider. So pretty much like an OBGYN, but you deal with low-risk women. So we deliver the babies, we advocate for the women as well, and we also hang out with them during their prenatal visits, postpartum, GYN. So pretty much everything an OBGYN does and women health nurse practitioner.
Okay. So I feel like, especially with what's going on right now with Black maternal health, I think that us as Black women look at Black nurse midwives and especially doulas for our prenatal and also like our intranatal care. Can you tell me the difference kind of between a doula versus a nurse midwife, and like what are the differences as far as like certifications and like kind of what a doula can do versus a midwife?
Definitely. So a doula and a midwife are completely different, and that is the biggest misconception out there. So a doula is like your advocate, your best friend, pretty much your baby daddy, but an educated baby daddy knows everything about birth, labor, medications, but they're not a provider. So they're not skilled to deliver your baby or give you medication. Now your midwife is your provider. They deliver your baby, they're your advocate. They can help you with contractions and like labor pains, but they're actively there to manage your labor and help you through your prenatal visits and postpartum care.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm pregnant and I wanted to find a nurse midwife, how would I know that I could even see a nurse midwife versus the OB? Like, what is that process like? And are there certain states that only OBs can work in, or nurse midwives? Like, how's that process?
Definitely. So every state is different, but every state has midwives. So a lot of people think that you can't have a midwife if you plan to deliver in a hospital, but every hospital has a practice of midwives. So all you have to do is really like Google like your area, and you can Google like midwives in that practice and go from there. Now, risk can definitely like risk you out of having a midwife. So if you have blood pressure issues, diabetes, and things of that nature, you may not qualify for a midwife, but they definitely can care for you throughout your prenatal, educate you, and like walk you through the prenatal process, but they may not be able to deliver your baby. And of course, if you're having a C-section, that would be an OBGYN as well.
Yeah. And I think that like also like knowing what midwives can do as a nurse practitioner, like I think that the common misconception is a midwife can only care for you when you're pregnant.
Right.
And I think that there's so much that nurse midwives can do and make me feel comfortable, like as a woman just talking to them. So like even like things like contraception and things like that. Like, can you talk about all the things that nurse midwives can do, like not even just during pregnancy?
Yeah, definitely. So anything you can think of GYN. So like vaginal concerns, birth control, contraception, IUD placement, anything you can think, circumcisions in some state. So definitely midwives do so many more things than just delivering babies.
I didn't even know that y'all could do circumcisions.
In
like,
some states
that's
you can.
crazy. Okay.
And also first assist for like surgeries. So even for C-sections at some hospitals, midwives can actually help the doctor with the stitching.
So can they do first assist in like surgeries that aren't necessarily like OB? Can they do first assist in like neuro or?
No.
Okay, but only OB.
Yeah, and this is just me talking from like a DC or DMV perspective, but I'm pretty sure no.
Okay.
Because we're all things like just uterus, vagina, like that type of area, but it has to be more so like women's health specific.
Okay. So back to the Black maternal health, which is a huge thing. Yes. So it's interesting because one of my friends gave birth recently, and one thing that I advocated for her to do is make kind of like a birth wish list.
Okay.
So I feel like it's really good from a provider standpoint too, because you don't have to necessarily answer as many questions.
Yes.
So can you talk about like things that maybe you might advocate for your patients to do, like coming in, like for example, think about these things with your partner, like if you are okay with having students, if there's music you want playing, like what are the things that you feel like you want Black women especially to think about that, you know, might cause some anxiety before birth?
Yes, first and foremost, Black women, women in general, this is your experience, this is your process. So you should feel empowered. So birth plan, number one, every woman should have a birth plan. And a lot of nurses feel as though like, you know, when women come in with birth plan, oh my God, like she's doomed, or they don't like it. Like some L&D nurses and OBGYNs, they don't like when women come in with birth plans. Like, and this is me being very transparent, being on the other side.
Wow.
And it's very interesting to me because I feel like for anything major in our lives, we create plans. For entrepreneurship, we create business plans. For traveling, itineraries, birthday dinners, plans. So why wouldn't you expect a woman for the most vulnerable, important, happiest, saddest, who knows, day of her life to have a plan?
Yeah.
So number one, a birth plan. On a birth plan, it can entail so many different things, such as who you want in the room with you, whether you want students, if you want medication, what type of birthing assistance, whether you want like vacuum assistant or things of that nature. So definitely make sure your plan is like thorough. What I will say is be flexible, because your plan may not go as it's stated on that piece of paper, but coming in with that plan is giving you that power that you need in that process.
And I think there's so many things that, like, I love that you said, think about what happens if the plan doesn't go as planned.
Yeah.
So like thinking about, like, for example, like if you might want to give birth at a larger hospital, because like maybe if you're a woman who's experienced any type of trauma, you might not feel comfortable with a male OBGYN. You might want to have the opportunity to have a female nurse midwife or, you know, a female OBGYN in the room if that's what makes you feel safe. You know, and I think that there's so many things that we don't think about until there's a problem, and I think that that's really a great thing that your nurse midwife can help you work through, is like, what are the possible problems that could happen in birth?
And there are so many possible problems. Birth is the most unpredictable process there is. So even being an L&D nurse for many years, I would go into work not knowing what's going to happen. It can be a very easy day, good day, bad day, sad day, I didn't know. And with that perspective, I tell women to go in, like I said, flexible, but also educate and empower. Make sure you have a team, a doula. If you don't have a midwife, that's okay. Have your OBGYN, but have someone there to advocate for you and educate you. People are going to be coming in there talking to you, touching you, and these are things you want to make sure that you're specific about. If you're going to put your hands on my body, tell me what you're doing.
And who you are.
And who you are.
Right.
When you walk into my room, you greet me. These are the bare minimum things that you would think that everybody knows.
Absolutely.
But no, like I've seen medical students walk into my patient's room and say nothing and just stand there and look. And I'm like, say hi to my patient. Like
they're a person.
Yeah,
they're a person.
This is technically their home. You get what I'm saying? So you're coming into their space. So number one, greeting. Your professionals and providers should greet you at all times. Before any provider touches you, whether it's just to start an IV or take a piece of tape off your arm, tell you what they're doing. Whatever they're infusing into your body, know what they're doing exactly, even if it's a normal saline flush. All of these things matter because in the long run, you hear so many women telling their birth story and they don't even know what happened. You know, so.
I think that's so important too, and I think that even though like in the realm of like from a provider standpoint, we're constantly told like if something happens, we don't apologize. But it's interesting because, you know, I work with a lot of people in medical malpractice, and one thing that's a common finding with patients is that when you just explain and you just keep them abreast of what's going on and you're honest and you're open, a lot of times you won't get sued. Or you at least have a relationship with the patient that they know like, hey, you know, I know that my nurse midwife or my provider has my best interest at heart. Like there's no malicious type of intent. Like I know that they have like me at the forefront of their care. So I think that's a really good point for us, like as providers, and you know, whoever's watching this, whether they're an L&D nurse or what have you, to just kind of take a step back and remember that it's not just a job, and a lot of times we have to remember these are people that we're treating, and you know, they have feelings, and most importantly, they are afraid.
They're afraid.
I would be scared.
I'm a midwife and I'm scared.
Right.
To have a baby and to be in a setting to where I'm vulnerable. It's so unpredictable. You never know what can happen. So yes, like birth is frightening, but I don't want women to have that fear tactic. I want them to feel empowered and educated. So how do you do that? You create a team that's going to educate you. You talk to your nurse and establish a plan. When you come into the room, tell me what you're doing. You should be the head of your plan of care. You should know everything that's going on with you. And I think a lot of women feel left out of their birthing experience. It's like the doctor's telling them everything they need to do, how they need to do it. And you can say no. Like people don't understand, like they can say no. Like you literally can say no. Now, if your baby's like looking like kind of bad on the monitor. Like you
we see those D cells.
Right, D cells, you see the D cells is like, okay, like maybe you should like trust your provider, but all of that trust is built throughout the prenatal period. So like trust is number one, and when you build that trust with your provider or even nurses with your patients, make sure that you all establish that and go from there.
Yeah, I love that. So let's switch topics. So let's talk about L&D.
Okay.
Because I know that it's such a hot topic, and all the girlies want to get into L&D and NICU and all the specialties. So did you start off in L&D?
Girl, child, no.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let me ask you this. How do you feel like you were able to transition from whatever specialty you were in to L&D? And what advice would you give to like your younger self who wanted to go into L&D from another specialty?
So definitely, first and foremost, I started in a nursing home, and a lot of people don't know that. I worked in Kentucky.
Oh my gosh.
Kentucky to be exact. For 6 months after I graduated, May 2015, I had my ADN for my HBCU, Kentucky State University. And I worked at the nursing home for 6 months from, I guess, like June until January. And I was like, I can't do this. So all in all, basically, I then applied for many L&D jobs. Everyone's like, get 1 year med-surg, get 1 year med-surg. And when I thought about what all my instructors told me, they said, get 1 year med-surg. Me, without a mentor, without anyone really backing me, I was like, okay, maybe I should get this 1 year med-surg. Everyone's telling me to do it. Did the 1 year med-surg, and girl, when I tell you, stressed out every single day, 8 patients on the unit, no texts, literally felt like I wanted to smoke cigarettes. Like, girl, I was stressed out. But like, and for me, I'm just like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, initially I was an LPN and I transitioned into RN, but I always thought that I would have more control over my career, and it just wasn't given what they said it was supposed to give. And I'm like, you know what? I am going to keep applying for L&D positions. So I got the 1 year, and I started to reapply for those same jobs. And it's like, oh, well, you don't have experience. The same people who told me to get the 1 year med-surg, I spent the block on them, and they told me to get experience. I'm like, how can I get experience if no one will hire me? So during that time, I was working my BSN. I then got my BSN, applied to some more jobs, and I landed a job at a facility in Louisville, Kentucky, which was like an hour from where I lived at, and I had to work night shift. And I was getting paid like $23 an hour. But it was a high-risk, level 4 NICU, and the best of the best. And I knew I would get the experience that I needed. Now, it was a hospital up the street that was like level 2 NICU, paying a little bit more, but it really wasn't giving me the best experience that I wanted. And I always wanted to do travel nursing, so I needed to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So with all of that being said, sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do. Did I want to drive an hour there to work and an hour back every day? No, I did not. But I had to get the experience. Also, sometimes you have to just trust the process. But for all of my new grad nurses, I definitely would say that you don't have to do 1 year med-surg.
Period.
Like, I don't know who told, maybe it was Florence, maybe she told them back in the day.
The lady with the lamp, honey.
But no, you do not have to do 1 year med-surg because it doesn't make sense. When I started on that L&D unit with new grad L&D nurses, we were neck and neck. I wasn't more advanced because I had med-surg experience.
Yeah.
So what I will say is that go into the specialty that you want to go into and put all your eggs in that basket and go hard, apply, send your resume over. When you're at your clinical site, show up, say hey to the manager. Yeah, you may feel weird doing it, but hi, my name is Queen. Like, thank you for my clinical experience. Leave a great impression. And, building that rapport with the unit, you can definitely land a nurse extern position, nurse residency, but definitely do not listen to anyone to say you have to do 1 year med-surg. Now, if you want to do 1 year med-surg or do med-surg, do it, but you don't have to confine yourself to that box. Just stick to that specialty.
I think that is so key because when people do a year med-surg, and I think I have to give props to you because it's a huge disadvantage to come in because you're not coming in as a nurse resident.
Right.
So you're not getting the length of an orientation that a nurse resident would get.
Yes.
You're getting a new to specialty orientations, which is shorter. So there's an obvious advantage when you come into a specialty as a brand new grad. You're going to get a very lengthened nurse residency program. And I went through that because when I went to the OR, I didn't come in as a nurse resident. I was already a nurse in psych. I had so much experience. But when I came in, I was trained as a nurse that was new to specialty. So it was a shorter, not a residency, but it was a shorter orientation experience. So I feel like when you come into your specialty of choice, you definitely have an advantage. But I feel like there's so many nurses who want to get into labor and delivery and NICU, and they don't get in. And I also noticed that there's a huge pattern with those nurses when they try to transition from other specialties that they don't necessarily do as well. And I think it's because they have the disadvantage of not having enough time.
They don't have enough time. They think that you're experienced, but really you're not experienced in that specialty. So I did get a shorter orientation, and the moment I got orientation, girl, I walked out of my patient's room one day, and I was like, I'm never going to get this. I've never been that person to say, like, I felt defeated. And I was like, I am not going to get this. Like, I should be more advanced. I have 2 years of experience. I'm starting L&D, but I didn't feel that. But I also got a shorter orientation. And with that being said, to anyone that is a new grad, like, just trust the process. Here I am now, I can run circles around any nurse. And that's not even to sound cocky, but I just have that experience. I worked at over 17 different hospitals doing travel nursing, and I'm where I wanted to be L&D, and I feel like I grew so much that I could. I'm like, okay, it's time to go back to school. So that's when I entered back into school to become a midwife.
And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, and then also I just think that, us, especially black nurses, y'all need to be in these spaces.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Say it.
Okay, and especially black nurses, y'all need to be in these rooms. Like, y'all need to be on these units. Like, L&D, NICU, postpartum. Black women they're dying. And they're dying because they're not being heard. They're not feeling like they have any relatability. So what I will say is that getting into these spaces, you can advocate for your patients. There's limited bias. You're able to, meet them where they're at and help them navigate their birthing experience to have better outcomes. So for me personally, I started in Kentucky. I was the youngest black nurse on my unit. I started nursing at 20 years old. And just being in that space, I never really felt like defeated, but I did feel imposter syndrome. Yeah. And I think that I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there because every time I had to fight 10 times harder to get half of the respect from the surgeons on the unit, from the OBs. And even though I was in that space because I deserved to be, I never felt that. And I want every new grad nurse to feel like you deserve to be in a room. You're there because God placed you there. And you just need to trust the process and really work hard, and all your results will come to fruition.
Girl, I'm crying. It's so interesting. I saw a video on another platform, and it was really. I feel like look. No, I'm serious. I'm so serious, but I'm gonna try not to cry.
Okay.
So it was by a Caucasian nurse, and I'm not sure if she's an L&D, but Jen speaks about this all the time. So this person had made a comparison and said, when moms give birth. And then when black moms give birth, and when the moms give birth, the partner in the room had asked if they could go, walk the dogs or, go to the bathroom, go home, shower, what have you. And she was like, I think how we're going, we might have 3 or 4 more hours until the birth, starts to happen. And I'll just give you a call if anything happens.
Yeah.
So it was funny because when the black mom was giving birth, she had asked the partner, I noticed you haven't left the room. Like, do you want to go to the cafeteria? Do you want me to show you where X, Y, and Z on the room is, in the unit is? And they were like, no, I'm not leaving this room.
Yeah.
And it was so mind altering to hear a white nurse, say that it's okay for black women to be afraid, and I see you afraid, and I see you.
Yeah.
And I think that, as we start to look at fields like labor and delivery and NICU and even PICU and wonder why there isn't as much representation for us there, we have to constantly reach back and make sure that our new grad nurses, are getting into these specialties and they understand that, we want you to get in, but we also need you to see that there's a weight being placed on your shoulder.
Yes.
We need you to see us. And make sure that if no one else is hearing our voices, that you are. So, y'all got a lot of work to do. Y'all got a lot of work to do. And I'm saying this is someone who's afraid. I don't have children, but it's a goal of me and my partner to have kids, and I'm scared. I'm scared. But I hope that this vulnerability helps other women who have been there, who have been afraid, who know that there's someone listening, someone who sees you, someone who's empowered to support you, and that we want to be your advocates, and we need you to advocate for us. When you come into a labor and delivery unit and you say, and it is okay to say this as a black person, because I tell my patients all the time, like they'll tell me, I know I see you for medication management, but I want a black therapist. And they're like, is that okay to say? Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you come into a labor and delivery unit and you're working with a provider, you can say, hey, do you have any black nurses? I want a black nurse.
Yeah,
Or if you're a female and, for example, you're Muslim, it's absolutely okay to say, I want a female, nurse. If that's what you believe, if that's what makes you feel comfortable, ask for these things. And if they say we don't have a black nurse on unit, why? I like to speak to a nursing supervisor. And this is so important too, like as we get into this, is escalation. Mm-hmm. If you speak to your nurse and you feel like you're not being heard, ask to speak to a supervisor.
Immediately.
And if the supervisor isn't hearing you, I want to speak, and you're speaking to a resident, ask the person who is, who your physician is, or your nurse midwife, I want to speak to the chief medical officer. Yeah. Wake them up.
And my thing is, I don't think that women don't know this. They don't know that they have the autonomy and that independence to do these things. So, creating this platform, thank you so much, Morgan, because not only us nurses, but women, black women, we need this. And even though I am a midwife, like I'm scared. I'm scared to go into labor and to have a baby because so many different things can go wrong and women aren't being heard. So like I said, like creating a team, an educated team, a doula, a midwife, preferably in my opinion, if you're not high risk, and educating the father of your baby or mother of your baby, what is this going to look like? Who do we want with us? Who's going to support us? How am I going to feel the most empowered?
And how to advocate in your absence if anything, God forbid, happens, or you need a C-section. I mean, we know that you're not like under all the way, but thinking about
could be like you can go under all the way.
Right, if you're anesthetized completely, like thinking about who's going to be your medical power of attorney. All these things that you should think about because we don't want the worst to happen, but we have to think about what if the worst happens. And having these conversations are hard to have.
Hard conversations. Literally last week, I hosted an event for Black Maternal Health Week. And basically, it was a birth worker appreciation event. So it was like a spin. Most of the events were geared towards mom, but this was geared towards the birth workers because I feel like the more you appreciate it, the more you're able to build community. And as I've been an L&D nurse, now midwife, I see the disconnect in the birth worker industry, like how sometimes doulas and midwives aren't on the same accord and L&D nurses aren't on the same accord. Like, we have to understand that we are also a part of the change. So in order for women and these outcomes to decrease, we have to work together. So if you're working on a team with a doula, a midwife, an OBGYN, we all have to be on the same team in order to make sure that woman has the best birthing experience. Yeah, and even the nurse, because I think that it's been a very interesting conversation to happen. And there was a creator who talked about her birthing experience and said that she assaulted a nurse and that she hit a nurse. But I think it was interesting because people always share the clip. They don't share the whole story. And in her story, and I listened to it and I was like, you were right. Because we have to remember that women are not, and it's so much like controversy, but women are in their correct state of mind when they're giving birth. Yeah. They're not psychotic. They're not, they're not emotional, overly they're able to make their own decisions and advocate for themselves. And the midwife had said the baby's birthing okay, there's no complications. If she doesn't want to be touched, we don't need to touch her. And you know what I would have done as a nurse? Put that in quotes and walked out the room. But the nurse still went ahead and touched the patient after the midwife directed the nurse not to. Okay. So I think that it's a lot of backstory that's there, but I think that we also have to continue to remember that birth is not necessarily like a state of someone being crazy. They're not psychotic. They're able to advocate for themselves, but also just remembering that that woman is still a patient. That's still our patient. And I can attest. Now, some women, they're not in their right state of mind. And not to say like crazy, but like some women go under hypnobirthing just because they have to get into like a really euphoric space because the pain can make you so like off that you are in a trance. You don't even understand like what you're doing. So I've had some cramps that are almost taking me out. So what I will say is that some women are not in their right state of mind. Now, hitting a nurse or something like that's never okay.
Right.
But like I've done missed some things, like missed some punches sometimes. Not because the patient tried to, but like they're going through a lot. Like they're literally birthing a human being. I've never felt it before, but if it's anything comparable to cramps, or they say 10 times worse, 10 times worse, I can understand that. But yeah, I mean, it's just, again, she probably didn't trust that nurse. The trust wasn't built initially because if my patient that I've had for 12 hours, she's birthing, we've already come to rapport, like, I'm looking like her sister. Like, I've been doing everything with her, starting her Pitocin, changing her position.
We locked in.
We're locked in.
Right.
There's no switching up.
Right.
So even when she gets into that trance, we have a rapport, we have trust. Like, I'm here for you. I'm not an enemy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So definitely in that space, birth is unpredictable. She could have came in fast. She maybe was there all day. I don't know the story. Yeah. But what I will say is that, as nurses, an L&D nurse, you have to build that trust and that connection with your patient. Yeah. I had a patient once that I came into the shift and she was mad. Like, I was like, what's wrong? She was like, I hate everyone here. Like, I'm about to. I was like, girl, you got IVs. You're like 5 centimeters. You truly can't go home. She was like, but I feel like I don't even know what's going on. Like, I have no clue what's going on with my plan of care. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, your baby looks fine on the monitor. I'm going to take you off the monitor. I'm going to unhook you from your IV. We're going to reset. We're going to refocus. We're going to meditate. If you want to pray, we can do that. But we're going to reset the energy in here because energy is how you're going to get to the finish line. Yeah. And she was just like, I appreciate that so much. And when I say her cervix started changing, her family felt okay to leave because they were stuck. They felt okay to leave and go home. They started crying because they were like, this entire shift, she's been here for 16 hours so far, I've never felt okay to leave her by herself because I didn't trust anyone. But you created this space for us in less than 2 hours of you being here. So she was able to succeed to a vaginal delivery, but what I will say is that trust is number one. Yeah. And me entering my midwife era, becoming a provider, I am gonna miss L&D nursing. Like,
girl, it's okay. We don't get enough tears today.
No, I've been an L&D nurse for a long time. And the births I've been a part of, they've been like magical. The women I've been able to advocate for, I've worked in so many different states and I've seen women being treated differently because they're Black. And because I am a nurse at that moment, like not saying that doctors or midwives at the time didn't respect nurses, it was pretty much their way or the highway. And I'm telling the patient, like, you can do whatever you want. It's your choice. And for me, having that consistent rapport with your patient as an L&D nurse is very personal to me, So shifting and becoming a midwife, I feel a little bit less connected to my client because you're more so on the provider standpoint, delivering the babies. But yeah, L&D nursing, you have to be locked in with your patient. Yeah. That's how she's going to succeed and how you're going to feel like you're going to have a good shift. Okay,
so no more crying. I'm gonna ask more serious questions. So, okay. So first, let's talk ratio. Because I think people hear like the 1 to 2, 1 to 1, and they're like, so easy.
No.
But okay, so realistically, so talk about the ratios and then talk about like, what happens if you're not able to switch off another patient while you have another one who's in active labor? Like, what do you do?
I have worked at so many hospitals that have good ratios and bad ratios. Now,
so what's the good versus the bad?
So an L&D unit normally is either 2 to 1. So if you have 2 low-risk patients that are like 1 to 2 centimeters, mind you have to get to 10 centimeters to deliver. So patients like 1 to 2 centimeters, you can have 2 of those because you're inducing them, they're actively going through, they may move slow, they may move fast. Now, normally when your client gets into active labor, like at 7 centimeters, they'll put you 1 to 1. Or if your patient goes on like magnesium, or you start Pitocin on them. But these East Coast hospitals, baby, they don't care about that. And I'm just gonna be very transparent with you.
Please.
And I don't know if it's like staffing ratios, but for the most part, 2 to 1 is what I'm used to. No matter what, walking into the unit, if they're a nurse, 2 to 1. And honestly, it's a lot. And sometimes I've worked at hospitals where my patient is pushing her baby out and I'm still have to watch my other patient on the strip, like their baby monitor. So God forbid, nothing ever happened. But let's say that baby with a tank and I'm in this room, I can call another nurse to help me, but at the same time, who knows if that nurse is available. So with that being said, at some hospitals the ratios are messed up. So, as a patient, definitely look into things like that. And those are questions that you should probably ask a nurse manager before wanting to have your baby at these hospitals, because that matters, number one. A lot of people think that that's sweet. No. When you have 2 laboring patients on a unit, it can get crazy. That patient's in pain. They may be actively delivering. Their water may be broken. Their baby strip may look horrible. A lot of decels, meaning that you have to position them, intervene, execute, do different things. So with that being said, being on a unit that is adequately staffed is very important. So as a patient that's coming on a unit, maybe getting an induction, ask about the staffing ratios. As a new grad or a nurse that's transitioning to L&D, ask about the staff ratios in a way. How do you have additional support? Do you call in additional nurses? Do you all have techs on the unit? Do you have nurse externs that are able to help for maybe position changes or low intervention options? Let me know what you have on this unit to help, so I'm not stressed out. 2 to 1 is not. It's comparable in my opinion. 2 laboring patients comparable to 6 med-surg patients, 6 or 7. So with that being said, definitely it's not a cakewalk at all. We're not just swaddling babies. I can count on a lot of hands, but not that many hands. How many times I've just held out with a baby and been able to hold them, and just probably just 2 hands, and I've delivered and helped deliver over hundreds of babies. We do not swaddle and carry babies all day.
That's nursery. That's nursery.
That's nursery. That's not even NICU.
Right.
That's nursery, and most hospitals don't have a nursery anymore. They have couplet care. So postpartum nurses, they're not doing that. They're educating the mom on how to do it. So with that being said, we're really in the field. We're making sure that mom is safe, make sure the baby is getting earthside safely. But afterwards, it's a lot of laboring care.
It's so much. So, the one thing I want to make sure that we cover is for people who are interested in L&D. The nurse girlies, because everybody wants to be L&D, NICU.
Because we them girls.
Right, okay. Y'all know, listen, labor and delivery is the hardest specialty in nursing.
When you made that TikTok, I was so
they were upset. The girls were upset.
I never went back to the comments. What they say?
I blocked them. You can't even see because I blocked them. That's what my therapist told me to do.
Blocked them. Because when I tell you, you are the OR nurse for C-sections, you are the ED nurse for OB triage, you are the labor and delivery nurse, you're the ICU nurse because my patient needs magnesium or insulin trip. Psych nurse. DC. Baby, we be having some clients. So you have some psych patients. You're a baby nurse. If you don't have a nursery nurse to help you, now have to take care of the baby. It's so many different things. Those are 6 specialties.
In one.
Let's talk about PACU, because when my patient gets out of the C-section, I have to recover them. So now we have 7 specialties in one. So yes, we're them girls. And honestly, people don't really see all the things that L&D nurses do. And also, if you're a nurse thinking about getting into L&D, please do not think it's going to be easy, an easy unit to work, baby, because you're going to work really hard. And it's not always cute, it's not always fun. So just be prepared for that.
Tell them, listen, people can poop. I'm going to say that so we don't get censored on YouTube. But they do all types of things while giving birth. So understand that, if you don't like doing, personal care for patients, you're going to do a lot of it.
Oh, yeah.
In L&D. I mean, episiotomies. Let's just talk about it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that you see
I've seen
during birth.
So many vaginas,
yes.
So many things come out of vaginas.
I don't even want to see that many vaginas. I'm good.
I've seen so many vaginas that I'm just even when I go to get my wax, I'm like, girl,
spread them.
What you need me to do? Because I do this every day.
Right.
What are we talking about? But it's such an intimate experience, especially for the patient. Like I said, going back to building that trust. As a nurse, you have to build that trust because you're gonna see your patient poop on themselves. Maybe rupture their membrane, their baby pooped inside, patient throw up maybe on you while they're getting the epidural. So many bodily fluids and blood. You're gonna see a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So if you're squeamish and that's not your thing, L&D is not for you.
Yeah, and it can be very embarrassing, I feel to a first time mom. But listen, just know we've seen it all.
Yeah.
We've seen it all. We don't care.
Don't care.
We don't care. So what would you say as far as people who want to go into nurse midwifery? Because girl, we see these, I call them diploma mills. we've seen a lot of diploma mills. So we went to the same school. Our school is not a diploma mill. Our school is that girl. And it was actually the birthplace of modern midwifery in the UPLS, which is something I'm really proud of.
Yes.
But what would you say that you think you looked for as far as like in your midwifery journey? And what do you think are like the most important things that people should look for in a program?
So in a program in general, I am a big advocate for HBCUs. There are no programs out there that have a nurse midwifery program for HBCUs. Hopefully I can change that.
Okay.
But neither here nor there, definitely look for a program of choice that's going to work for you. Hybrid, meaning that you have to go to campus sometime, or online completely, or just completely virtual and you're only doing your clinical in person. For me personally, that worked for me. I was travel nursing for a long time. I wanted the autonomy of doing my classwork but still going wherever I needed to go. So, virtual versus in-person classes. A lot of FNPs and midwives are doing the virtual route, and it works. Because when you think about it, you're doing all your didactics, so all your schoolwork on the front end, and then you're able to really focus on clinical on the back end, closer to practicing as a provider.
Yeah.
So definitely if you're looking to get into midwifery, number one, high school diploma, of course. And then you go to your university or your community college, you get your ADN or BSN. I definitely prefer for nurses to get L&D experience, 100%.
Yes.
1,000%. If you are a nurse thinking about becoming a nurse midwife, please get labor and delivery experience. Who says that you even like it? You probably don't like it. So with that being said, getting the L&D experience now, I do have classmates who don't have any L&D experience and they are midwives now. But I think you have so much more knowledge if you start off L&D and then go into midwifery. So, you become an L&D nurse, I say get 2 to 3 years of experience. I'm never an advocate to say, get your BSN and go right back to school. No, baby, work the floor for a while, get your 2 years of experience, and then apply for a college. And I would prefer virtual versus in person. But virtual, and then you do that, and then you graduate. You take your board, similar to NCLEX, but it's for midwifery. And then after that, you just get your state licensure, and you start doing credentialing for a hospital.
Okay.
And you become a midwife,
Okay.
And a lot of people think that midwives are only in home births, but you can practice as a midwife in hospitals, home births, birthing centers. So there are so many different options, and a lot of people don't talk about those different options.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay, so another thing is that you're a business owner too.
Yes.
So let's talk about your business, and let's talk about your why for starting your business, and what do you kind of hope to accomplish as far as a business owner and as a nurse midwife?
Definitely. So a lot of people ask me that question. They always ask, am I planning to integrate the two? I am not planning.
Okay.
So if you all don't know, I am an IV hydration business owner. I have a concierge IV hydration business in the DMV area where I go to clients and serve them with vitamin therapy and drip therapy in the comforts of their homes, event space, or hotels. Overall, it's been a great experience. My why for going into business was COVID. The moment that I was taking travel assignments, they looked me dead in the face and said, if you do not take this shot, you either have to basically eat your food in a closet, or you can't eat your lunch on the unit. You have to go outside. Mind you, I didn't even have time to do that. And I'm like, wait, what? Or you're going to lose your contract, basically. And I was just like, okay. So I felt very forced. I got the vaccine because I had to. I'm not happy with my decision, but at that time I felt very back against the wall. So I was like, I need another route. So at that moment, I looked into classes and courses, got my IV hydration knowledge, started my business, and it's expanded like no other. When I tell you DC, you would think it's a lot of drip bars there, but there aren't a lot of IV hydration clinics there. I mean, you're from the DMV, but so many people want it. So many people can afford it, and they need it because they're so busy. So we found our niche, we found our little market, so we're scaling and growing. Now, for me personally, the moment I tell someone I'm a nurse practitioner or a midwife, they're like, you're not gonna make a lot of money. Go back to the bedside. Because travel nurses make more than you, and I'm like, baby, if I was doing this for the money,
I'd have been quick. I'd have been back there.
I would have went back to square one. And I've been doing some other things. I've never been doing this, but midwifery is my passion. But when I think about anything in the medical field, there's a cap. I can only make $250, $300K a year. And granted, that's a decent living. But I do not use my nursing degree as a degree. I use it as a tool. So with that being said, I created my business. Now that's another stream of income that's not capped. Meaning that I can hit 7 figures. I can hit multi-7 figures in my business, but with midwifery, Nursing, you will never do that because you're working for an organization, you're working for a hospital. So with that mindset, I'm like, it doesn't matter to me that I'm going to be working PRN or part-time as a midwife because I still have this very lucrative business that I'm fostering. And at the same time, I'm that girl and I'm multifaceted and I can do what I want. So every time somebody faces me with that question, or tell me that, because I am a provider now, I'm not going to make more than a travel nurse. I'm like, I don't care. I make more than travel nurses.
Period.
What are we talking about?
So let me ask you this. So for people who are interested for nurses who are interested in getting into nurse entrepreneurship,
Yes.
what are some pieces of advice you would give? And then if you could change anything in your business, go back in time to when it started, what would you do?
Okay, so pieces of advice. Number one, trust the process. You have to trust the process. As nurses, we are the hardest people to become entrepreneurs. Why? Because I have this lucrative job. I can go back to the bedside and run up a check if I really wanted to. My back may hurt a little bit, but I can run a check up at the bedside. At the same time, with that mindset, entrepreneurship is going to get hard. You may be broke, you may not be making money, you may not have consistent clientele, but you have to see it through. You have to be resilient. If you're not resilient, you won't win. But a lot of people during that sticky moment, they go back to the bedside and they don't foster their dreams. So with that being said, I definitely would say trust the process. Number two, keep your job. Stop telling people to quit their jobs.
Amen, girl.
Stop telling people to quit their job and jump to entrepreneurship. Oh, I have nothing. No, you do have. You have a degree.
Yeah.
Use your degree. Use the bedside. Stack your coin, and simultaneously build your business. Yes, you may work 12-hour shifts, get off and have to work on that business plan, apply for those grants. That's okay. It's going to be a season of hustle and grind. But do not quit your job when you first think about starting your business. Grow your income, and when your business starts taking off, then you can go ahead and quit your job. And then one thing I wish I would have changed when I first started my business is getting a mentor. I definitely took a class, and of course, which was an amazing class and course, but I didn't follow up on mentorship. I took the class and course, and I was just okay, cool, I got this, I'm gonna figure it out. And honey, did I figure it out? I lost money. I was insulted by doctors, medical directors, while starting my business. I wasted so much money on inventory, just overspending. I didn't have an intentional plan. I didn't have someone walking me through what I needed to do. So I do think that I would have invested more into a mentor to help expedite my process and also save me a lot of money.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So let people know where they can find you, where they can connect with you, on what platforms, and we will link it in the bio.
Yes. First and foremost, thank you so much, Morgan, for having me. As I said, my name is Queen. You can find me on Instagram at Nurse Queen, on TikTok as Nurse Queen, and on YouTube as Nurse Queen. In my bio, you can find my link tree, and that lists all my services and all my other platforms that I post a lot of content on, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.